The Great War. Part 1. The Spark of War. While racial tensions had always been present on Dekutaras, during the 1200s they began to rise significantly as the humans of the Athenican Federation formed strong alliances with, at the time, the two most powerful nations in the world, the Hanavor Diarchy and the Onyxian Union, and began to expand their influence and ties to many other nations in the world. By the end of the 13th century, the Antarian Federation, the Confederation of Elid and the Kingdom of Frampton, would join the Federation, and early in the 14th century, so would the Republic of Soldinia, making the human-ruled Federation the largest and strongest power in the world. As the power dynamic in the world shifted, there began to arise a populist movement within the Onyxian Union, the Order of Akasha, and the Gontar hegemony. This movement was based in large part on the rejection of humans being at the top of the power hierarchy of the world. The dwarfs of the Nasian and Ush tribes of southern Onyxia broke away from the Onyxian Union in the early 1300s, forming the A'khulak Empire, and the Gontar hegemony would see its leadership captured by the radical elven supremacists known as the Caesanes, who massively expanded the Gontar hegemony's power beginning in the mid-1200s, forming alliances with the Order of Akasha, the Confederacy of Licks, the kingdoms of Zel and Talos, and opened up trade with the Japagian Federation, the Athian Empire and the Kingdom of Siran. Several wars during the 1300s would see dramatic power changes among the major powers, the rise of pirates and warlord factions throughout the world, and tensions rise steadily. It was the A'khulak-Saharian War that would ignite the powder keg, sparking the largest war in the history of the world. The A'khulak Despotate under the rule of despot A'khulak, eldest son of the deceased A'khulak, and the Saharian Dominion under the rule of Supreme General Saharia, A'khulak's top military commander at the time of his death, had been in a constant state of conflict over the past 36 years since the death of A'khulak and the fall of the A'khulak Empire. The contrast in the economies and satisfaction with their leadership within the two nations was stark. In the fourth moon of 1373, there were massive revolts within the Despotate. Saharia took full advantage of this as she invaded and claimed the eastern cities of the Despotate. Though many people were killed as Saharia's forces took the eastern cities of Ush, most of the dwarfs within these cities greeted Saharian forces as liberators rather than conquerors. By the end of the fifth moon, many ships and thousands of soldiers from these cities had joined the Dominion. While her forces were more powerful than A'khulak's, Saharia knew that her naval and military advantage would not be enough on its own to collapse the Despotate. So, before her invasion she sent word to all the cities of the Despotate that all those who joined the Dominion would be granted full citizenship, and all past crimes against the Dominion forgiven. She also promised to disperse the wealth seized after A'khulak was deposed to the cities of the Ush territory. On the 15th day of the sixth moon, Saharian forces took the capital city of Sartarswak. The battle was bloody and costly on both sides, but it was decisive. Saharia had predicted correctly that A'khulak would not go down with his city, as his ship, along with a small pirate fleet, were intercepted 300 goli west of Sartarswak attempting to flee into the Zarahar Sea. A'khulak's ship was destroyed, and though the rest of his fleet surrendered, the ships were taken by the Dominion and every member of their crews were executed on the spot. Though there were still many warlords within the Despotate, as well as within the Syndicate, that remained enemies of Saharia, most of the lower-ranking members of the various pirate factions and former naval units joined the Dominion, as the pay and security was much better under Saharia. While Saharia was just as ruthless as any warlord, she was significantly more egalitarian with her nation's wealth. She also heavily rewarded informants as she, during the aftermath of the war, set out to kill or gain the allegiance of all her remaining enemies. After nearly 40 years of conflict, on the 26th day of the sixth moon, Saharia had united the former states of Ush and Nasia, thus resurrecting the fallen A'khulak Empire. From Sartarswak, Saharia sent word to all the other nations of the world. The rule of A'khulak is no more. The Despotate is no more. What has arisen in its place is the A'khulak Dominion. We will realize the promise of A'khulak, that all dwarfs of the world will be united, that we will once again reign supreme in the world. No longer will we be subordinate to the humans and elves who look down upon us. Any dwarf that allows the subjugation of dwarfs to humans or elves should resign their power immediately. The people demand strong leaders who fight for them, not fight for those who would rather see the mighty bear tamed and locked in a cage. Meanwhile, the supreme leader of the Gontar hegemony, Taron Aaron, and his second-in-command, Renda Sikla, seized the opportunity that the chaos in the east provided. Leaders of the Izanis, an elven superiority faction that had gained dominance over the hegemony, had long wanted to invade the nations to their west. They were animated by the ideology that elves, and to a lesser extent dwarfs, should sit atop the hierarchy of power in the world. That if men or Ulsanja ever rose to rule the world, it would fall into chaos and constant war. Their beliefs were reinforced by the fact that in the West they had created a very peaceful and orderly nation, where the nations in the West, who all formed alliances with the humans, were in a constant state of war and conflict. They saw the rise of pirates and warlords, the corruption of Cyran with its nation of half-breeds, the diminishing power of the dwarfs of the East, and the decline of religion of Akasha, as a direct result of the expansion and growth in power and influence of the humans. In the fifth moon, while the powers of the East were largely focused on the A'khulak Saharian War, Gontar fleets began amassing within the hegemony. A massive fleet of Gontar ships was formed in the northern Gontar city of Bedbeg, under the command of Renda Sikla, and an even larger fleet was formed in the southern Gontar city of Kirkad. The Gontar fleet in the north, commanded by Supreme Admiral Renda Sikla, left the city of Bedbeg and set sail for Talos. Midway through the Great Expanse, the fleet split into 3 separate squadrons, and on the 20th day of the fifth moon, Gontar would begin their invasion of the Kingdom of Talos in the cities of Helster, Meerbai and Aradgaz. The largest of the squadrons was sent to Helster, where the kingdom, caught mostly unaware, was overwhelmed by the Gontar forces. The city surrendered on the second day, having been devastated by the Gontar fleet raiding parties. The cities of Meerbai and Aradgaz fell even quicker. When word reached King Goras of the invasion, who was vacationing in Chilchesto, he immediately dispatched word to the rest of the nation and his admirals. Fleets would be sent to Helster and to Lucaris, and city defenses would be armed throughout the kingdom. However, only a day after the Battle of Helster, the bulk of Renda's main fleet set sail for Lucaris, and the other 2 fleets sent half of their fleets to the Firestone mining town of Butcham. The cities were both captured by the 5th day of the 7th moon. King Goras and a large fleet of warships escaped the city and met up with a larger force in the mountain mining city of Clifnell. During this time, Gontar forces fought a very costly and fierce battle in the city of Bami. Talos forces were able to devastate the Gontar fleets, forcing Renda Sikla to send reinforcements from Lucaris. Concerned with the potential moral boost the kingdom would get if they were able to win the battle for Bamli, Renda Sikla sent a very vicious order to his forces. Once they took the city, they were to burn it to the ground and wipe out its population. On the 10th of the 6th moon, Bamli fell and its population was slaughtered. Renda Sikla sent a letter to King Goras. "You have heard of the slaughter of your people. You will hear more. If we cannot have your surrender and loyalty, we will have the blood and flesh of your people. We will start in your great ancient city of Lucaris. Our orc armies grown hungrier by the day. All we demand is your allegiance. Your pride will only see your people feed the bellies of our armies. Join the hegemony and save your people." On the 20th of the 6th moon, King Goras surrendered, making the Kingdom of Talos a vassal state to the Gontar hegemony. The Kingdom of Talos, which had existed for over 1,000 years, fell to the Gontar hegemony in exactly 1 month. Meanwhile, the leader of the Order of Akasha, High Priest Endelesic, convened a High Council of Akasha and informed them of the coming plan to invade the Hanavor Diarchy with their allies in the hegemony. While Endelesic had some support from the council, there was strong opposition to the plan, as many within the council were very much opposed to another holy war against their eastern cousins. However, these debates were soon squelched as the massive Gontar fleet entered the Order's territory, invited by the High Priest days before he informed the High Council. On the 17th day of the 6th moon, a massive fleet of Gontar and Akashan warships made port in the capital city of Enil and the city of Analand. During this time, several High Council members that opposed the invasion were murdered or arrested and replaced by loyalists to Lessig. The Hanavor Diarchy learned of these fleets days before they made port within the cities of the Order and began preparing their city defenses. While the Order and the Diarchy were always in a state of tension, the arrival of the Gontar fleet came as a huge surprise to the Diarchy. Even as news of the Gontar invasion of Talos reached the rest of the world, the Diarchy did not anticipate having to prepare for a full-scale invasion. Diplomats from both sides were dispatched to the border, but it became very evident that there were no negotiations to be had. War was coming.